Members of the company, this is your Places call. Places, please. Places for the top of the podcast. Places, please.
Get ready for a behind-the-scenes look at the glitz and not-so-glam of Broadway, education, and everyday life with Uncommon Sense. Join hosts Christopher Smith and Charna Lopez as they bring you the best stories and shenanigans that seemingly prove how elusive common sense can really be. So take a little time for yourself to hang out with the dynamic duo Charnopher. And no leaving early, because you might just miss that 11 o'clock number.
Stand by music. Music, go.
Uncommon sense, the 11 o'clock number. And we are Charnopher.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome.
Welcome to
Uncommon Sense,
the
11 o'clock number. I'm Charna Lopez.
And I'm Christopher Smith. And we
We
are
are Charnopher. Charnopher.
Dun, dun,
Oh,
dun,
man.
dun.
Hi, everybody. We were just talking a little bit before we started recording today about our followers and who's listening in. And
Yes.
It's kind of getting exciting. We've got some international notoriety going on.
That's right.
I'm loving it.
Five-
So our friends
we
who are
span
listening in Belgium, we appreciate you. I mean,
We-
truly, that's
We
awesome.
span across 5 countries. I think it was 5. I like it.
That's great. Okay, today, Christopher, hold on. I'm going to do the same thing. A little coffee mug
Should we
sip.
cheers? Cheers with our coffee mugs.
Let's cheers. Yeah, 1, 2, 3.
Cheers.
Mine says, love ya, mean it.
Oh, I love you too.
Today, we're going to talk about what Christopher and I like to call staying in your own lane.
Yeah. Stay in your own lane.
And not, well, I guess it could be toward other people, but more for ourselves, for us, reminder of stay in your own lane, stay in your own lane, stay in your own lane.
Yeah.
Christopher, do you want to explain
Yeah.
what
I will totally
what we mean
explain.
by that?
Yeah. It's basically like, for me, usually I'm just like on the music side of things. And so I'll be sitting there in a rehearsal and there will be something that has been directed. And it's like, that is a choice. I'm not sure that's the choice, but that is a choice. And it's like, do you say something? Do you not say something? And it's a delicate balance and it also depends on the director or the other creatives you're working with. Some people are like, sure, throw some ideas. Other people are like, stay out of my way. I'm doing it myself. So some of it's just knowing that. But even without any of that, I still just sit there and I go, okay, that's terrible. Or whatever. And then it's like,
Okay, that's awful.
yeah. And then I'm like, do I say something? And sometimes I do say something. If I really feel like it's a detriment to the show and it's going to send something like it's just going to blow the whole scene, I will probably say something, or at least have a discussion.
And I
or
think
have an
too,
idea.
like you and I have done a lot together, and you usually will preface your moment with like, I know this isn't in my lane.
Yes, it's true.
But and you'll kind of offer it up. And I think on the reciprocating end of it, now I can also talk to your position and being like, nope, leave it alone. But being like, because I've had it happen with you before where you're musically directing, I'm directing or choreographing, and you'll be like, okay, Charna, I know this is not my lane, but blah, blah, blah. And I think the biggest thing is it comes down to just being open, not getting defensive, right? Like, so if you were to say something to me about direction or choreography, I don't take it as like oh, he doesn't think I'm doing my job right, or oh, he thinks what I'm doing is bad. Sometimes it's more of a conversation of like, well, Christopher, I just need to let you know, child A has been asked no less than 725 times to do exactly what you are asking. And they are just not going to do it. And oftentimes I find that that's usually the answer, at least with me. Or, oh, I never looked at it that way. And I think sometimes, even when I have younger directors who I hire at my studio or who I see at OSHA or whatever it may be, there's this, you want to do it right. You want to do it the best. You don't want to disappoint anybody. You want to make sure, you know, you're showing up and doing it well, when really you're still learning. And so I think sometimes just being open to somebody. Now, if you came in and you were like, well, that's terrible, and you know, that needs to be changed, I think it's all the way you approach it, right? Because what I love the collaboration. Like, there have been so many times with you and I, we work with Maddie and Parker Young, who we should have them on here together. Would be fun.
Together. That would be so fun together.
Right. Becca, who is one of my other musical directors, Kristen, the people I've recently worked with is who I'm thinking in my brain so many times, where I would love for a second set of eyes on it, or a second set of ears to be like, ooh, can we change? Like, they are not hitting that note. We need an alternate melody. Like, how do you feel about that? Is that something that we could do, Christopher or Becca? You know, and I think it's because it is a collaborative work. But there are times I can remember in recent moments where I literally am like chanting it in my head. Stay in your own lane, Charna.
Yes.
Stay in your own lane, Charna.
I do that.
It's not your job. And I think too, Christopher, you have so much experience, and we both do, but
yes, we do.
Musically, we do. But sometimes going to see other shows or being part of a process that maybe people work a little bit differently than we do, you kind of have to just take the step back and remember, okay, I'm not in charge of that part. I would have done it completely differently, but it's not my job. So I'm going to allow that person to have the moment, to have the choice on stage at that time.
But I have to say, that happens even in the most professional productions. Like, I'll go see a production and I'll be like, what happened? Yeah. How is that the choice that you made and thought that was a good choice? And maybe if someone, and I think too, it's like, see something, say something.
Right, but for theater.
Because it's like,
that's actually really funny.
How do you sit on any part of the creative team and go, oh, we're just going to let that happen?
Yeah. Yeah, and that goes for costumes too, right? Sometimes like the costumer has such a different vision or idea, and even if you as a director have like spoken with them and you've discussed things, and then when they get on stage, and I will tell you, the last several costumers I have worked with have been so wonderful, in just like, okay, that's not what you wanted, or that's not what you were thinking about, you know, let's meet halfway, or what about this, or what about that, because it is a creative creation process. But I'm going to jump back to watching any theater, professional theater, youth theater, things that I am not connected to. I have to really, really remind myself in those instances to go in without my director brain on and just be an audience member, which is very hard to do. It's very hard to do because we live in that world. We kind of know either how we would have done it, how we've done it in the past, what might work better, what could be a better choice there, what might be funnier, what might be smoother. And I catch myself often watching shows where I'm just like, oh, and then I have to retrain my little brain to be like, just an audience member, you know, right. I can't, not my show. And heaven forbid you and I go to see a show together. It's all the faces and the and the squeezing of the leg and the
oh, and we haven't done that in a while. We need to do that again soon.
Yeah. And I feel like, especially with our students, that I'm very, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty good at masking certain things and delivering information to kids with a pleasant face. But when I'm an audience member, I am not good at that.
Yeah.
If you look at me, like even when I go see things with Jerry sometimes, he's like, Charna.
Yeah.
Like if anyone were to look at you right now, they would clearly understand that you're not enjoying whatever's happening on stage.
Oh, man.
I mean, you're in a dark theater, you know? You're like,
I know.
Ugh.
I know.
I know.
Well, man, I was just talking about this type of thing actually with my brother just the other night because I don't know how we got onto it, but I somehow got onto Frozen. And I was like, Frozen. There's some things
Okay, hold on. Frozen
show.
the movie or Frozen the musical?
Musical.
Okay.
The Broadway version. And
Have you seen it?
Yes. Well, I saw it on tour when it came through LA.
Okay.
And there were a number of times that I was like, oh, okay, that's how is that happening right now? And then, and I think I might have touched on this at some point. That's a choice. But it actually made me angry not from a director standpoint or from the actor standpoint and the singer standpoint. Because P.S., you can't change the keys. You're not allowed to change keys in that show, like some other ones. And they're screlting their face off and it doesn't sound good. And wouldn't you want the show to sound good and change the key?
And is that just something they have in the licensing where you are
Yeah.
not allowed to change the key?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I've never understood that, honestly. Like, then either hire someone and cast someone in the role who can sing it
Can do
correctly
it.
or gets there.
8 shows a week.
Or or the other way around. Like, be able to change it
Yeah.
and have it suit that performer.
And it's just hard to sing in general. It's a demanding show. But the moment that I was already like angry going to intermission because, they changed the end of Let It Go. So it goes up. So it's more dramatic, And I was like, she couldn't hit it. And it's not really her fault.
Yeah.
And so then I was just mad for everybody. And then Act 2 opens. And I went back and looked on YouTube because I found a bootleg. It's like 12 minutes long for, I don't remember what
song
it's called.
is it?
Like
What's the opening
Huga.
of Act 2?
It's like
Yeah.
or whatever it is.
Yep. I know which one it is.
I want to just say like
I know
Haga
which one it is.
Fluga Fliegenhagen.
It's 12 minutes long.
Something like 12 minutes. And I was sitting there going, how did this make it out of previews?
Yeah.
Or even the workshop. How did it make it past the workshop?
Totally.
But anyway, so there's that. But I sit there and I get all judgy. And then I'm like, why? I just paid money.
Yep.
Just sit back and enjoy. Me being mad is not going to fix the situation.
I had a really good girlfriend, one of my besties, the Sassy Six, who we're going to have on here as well, Christopher. I already told you I want them on here.
I think that's going to be another episode that I just am going to sit back and go, I'm here to be a viewer on this podcast.
Right? It might need to be 2 episodes. But she just went back to New York to visit one of our other friends who just had her choreographer debut on Broadway, which is awesome. And while she was there, I think she was there like 2 days and she saw 3 or 4 shows.
Nice.
And she had this same conversation with us when she came back, where she was like, it really makes me sad how it seems like now people go to the theater and just immediately are so judgy. Like even non-theatrical people, right? Where it's like, I'd like to see you try to get your butt up on the stage and do this. And, the reviews or even just people talking after the show or, things chatter you hear and stuff on social media. And it's like, instead of just being able to say like, I can't remember which one she said, but it was like, I really enjoyed X, Y, and Z about the show. This part, not so much, but that's okay. And I really enjoyed this. Instead of focusing on the like, well, why did they cast that person and that person? I think there's just such a already judgy like vibe when you go, instead of sitting, watching, and being like, okay, that was an experience, and I enjoyed this part and this part. Right.
Well, Charna, that's our culture now, 2023. Everybody's got to have an opinion. And it's like, no,
I know.
everybody does not need to have an opinion, because
Or
odds are
you
it's
can
an
have an
uneducated
opinion.
opinion.
And or you can have the opinion, but that's just what it is. You don't need to share it with your followers and your
world.
people and your, yes, correct. It's fine.
those-
And I tell my kids this all the time. My own kids. Like, Ruby, you don't have to like whatever I just made for dinner, but I don't need to hear about it.
That's right.
It's true. No one's telling you have to like whatever I just made, but no one needs to hear it. That's your food.
Right. Eat it.
I know.
Eat your food. Tina,
I
eat
know.
your food.
And I think it's I think it's everywhere, you know. I'm excited probably next month, probably May, to announce which shows I'm doing at school next year. And I already know there's going to be the kids that are like, yeah, what? And then kids are like, why are we doing this show? You know? And I'll be like, then don't do it. That's okay.
That's right.
That's
You don't like
totally
it, don't do
fine. Don't throw shade. Just go on your merry way. And I think there's a fine line of, you know, trying to do shows that your students will enjoy, but also remembering that you're an educator and that you need to choose productions, material, lessons that they're going to learn from and that they can be challenged in, or, you know, that they'll learn and grow to enjoy. I think it's a big part of it.
That's right.
Christopher, I have a question for you. So
no.
talking about staying in your own lane.
Yes.
As a musical director, and you and I have worked a bunch together, but maybe this is more often when it's a different director. Are there just certain things that you're like, you've crossed a line if you try and talk about this with me, or that's like, no one should get in this lane of my musical director, conductor, musician
You know,
part?
I have to say, I don't think there is a hard specific line, which is the tricky part, because at least from the receiving end, I'm like, if something's bad and I'm not noticing it because I'm thinking about 5 other things, I want to know so we can fix it.
Yeah.
And I think when it becomes tricky is when, like, let's say you were doing even Rent or Phantom or something that is the entire show is music. That's when it can become tricky, because it's like so much of my lane crosses over into your lane or whatever, you know? And so it's a little bit, it's just a delicate dance, because so much of what I do influences what you will be doing and vice versa. So that in those instances, I think you just have to really, in really any instance, just realize that if you're trusting who you're working with and you're collaborating, however it comes out, it's not meant to be anything but helpful and constructive.
Yeah.
You know?
I think, and you know what? I'm so glad you said that, because I was actually going to say, I think that's like the crux of it, right? If you don't take it as like a critique, you don't take it as, well, you did this wrong and I know better, but you kind of accept that information as, hey, they're just trying to help. I will say with me as a director, and I've run into this a couple times, and I won't say with who, where I work with people who have varied backgrounds. So, you know, they might be a dancer, singer, musician, director. They might be all of those things. And I think sometimes that's more difficult because they do have a little bit more experience in those lanes. And
you must not be talking about me, because I can stage. I cannot choreograph, but I can march.
I mean, I didn't say marcher. Yeah. If I had said they have some experience marching, then you'd know that I was talking about me. Well, you helped me stage that Hamilton number, and you did a really great job.
Yeah, I liked it. I still like that one.
You can
stage. Oh, I can stage. Well, I just can't choreograph.
And you're musical.
Yeah.
being musical helps.
Oh, wait,
but I think
I'm musical?
for me, it's
I do that? Okay.
I'm sorry, what? I think for me, it's offer your viewpoint, say what you have to say, and then let that person who it's their job, like you've merged into someone else's lane.
You put your blinker on,
offer your opinion. What?
You put your blinker on, though.
Yeah. I put my blinker on and I ensured that there was plenty of space. I didn't cut anybody off and I eased in there and then I said, blah, blah, blah. What about this? Here's what I think. Here's what I'm noticing. And then I go like this, back in my own lane. I don't go back in. I don't keep going. I think that's where sometimes I will get a little frustrated where and I have said to a person at least once I can remember in my head, like, thank you, but it's not your job. And I've had to say that. I've had to say it sometimes because to the point where like you've said it 4 times. And if I wanted to do it that way or I wanted to change it that way, I would have, and instead of a nice, oh yeah, hey, I never thought about that. And I think that comes with personality of like, oh no, I know better. Right? Instead of, I want to offer this to you. And okay, if you're not going to do it that way. And I have to be in that seat sometimes. I have a theater company that you've worked at with me and we have tons of different directors. And I love when they ask for my opinion and I have to know going into it, here's my opinion. Here's what I would do, but it's your show. It's your show. So take what you want and leave the rest. But my name's not on the program other than being a producer, Right. So I think sometimes it's that merge with the blinker. I like that reference. And then go back in your own lane and just know that you offered your opinion, you offered your information, and then you just let it be. You just let it be.
And that's the thing, is just let it be. Because if you said it and they didn't take it, then that's it. You're like,
and
okay.
Let's turn it to student cast members too. So this, I think it's a little bit dicey and a little more specific. So I love students who have ideas. Love it. I mean, that's what acting is. That's what performing is. That's what creating a character is. And I want them to feel, and I think musically too, Christopher, I love kids who want to maybe like make a choice or do whatever.
100%.
But I tell students that, but at the end of the day, I'm the director and I don't mean this in like, I rule over you. It's my vision. And if you don't like that one cross I gave you, we can talk about it. But if I visually think it's necessary for the show, or if I want you to do this specific piece of choreography right here, or Christopher wants you to sing it this way, at the end of the day, you have to be able to say, okay, I put my trust in the people that are running this show and they don't want it to look bad. They don't want me to look bad. It's the same with costumes. I can tell you how many times kids are like, this looks so terrible on me. I'm like, you know what? When I'm standing up close to you, it does. From the audience, it doesn't look bad. And I think they need to be reminded of that. Like, it's so much more than just you right here in this moment and what I'm doing. It's bigger picture,
This is not film and TV, people.
Yeah, totally.
Stay in your own lane. Also, don't give another actor a note. That's a whole nother situation.
Yes. And you know where we run into that? Well, I think sometimes kids in particular, because I've worked far more with students or young adults, I think they think they're being helpful.
Of course.
I honestly don't think that they're like, ooh, I'm going to, get Mrs. Lopez or like Charna made the wrong choice. I think it's more like, oh, I think this would be funny for them or this is a good idea. And then they need to have that talk of like, that's not your job. It's not your job. And even, I mean, we're in a production for Matilda right now. My daughter, Ruby, 7, is in it, and she's having a ball. And even last night, she's like, Mom, there's some kids who don't know where they're supposed to go. And I looked at her and I said, Ruby, worry about yourself. Miss Maddie, Miss Katie Jo, the people who are in charge, that's their job. They're going to figure it out. They're there to help everybody else. Now, if somebody asks you, hey, Ruby, do you know where I'm supposed to go? Then you can be very helpful. But other than that, stay in your own lane.
That's right. But you know what? That reminded me of something. I'm like, that brings up an interesting point. Like, let's say you are in a show and you are little Ruby May going, these people do not know what they're doing, which I understand because I'm sometimes surrounded by people that don't know what they're doing either. But what, and this is actually an opinion question for you, Charna, just from your experience,
Yeah.
what should that cast member do if you feel like the directors aren't noticing, or it's continually happening, and because there's 500 things for somebody to look at. There's an easy, they can easily be missing it. So at what point do you say something?
I like when students come to me and they'll and I have older, mostly students, not 7-year-olds. So it might be a little difficult for a 7-year-old to articulate. But I like when they come to me and they don't say, so-and-so's doing the wrong thing, or this part looks bad. They'll ask, like, hey, the traffic patterns here, or they'll say, like, this formation, they usually put it on themselves. They'll usually make it their thing. Like, and they're not lying, but they're just like, hey, this formation is wonky. Can we review this formation? And I think that way they're like including the cast or the people that are in part of that, even though that student probably knows what they're doing.
Right. Because they're probably not asking the question if they didn't know already.
And a lot of times students will, and I think it's a delicate balance and a fine line, but I have many students, and I can think of, 5 off the top of my head, who are the kids that know everyone's parts, everyone's lines, where do your hands go on every step of choreography, but they are usually the ones that will ask, Mrs. Lopez, are the hands here or are they here? Because they're doing it in hopes that their friends in the back are listening.
Yes.
And it's a good jog of my memory of like, oh, maybe we do need to review that part, and I can see which kids,
Yeah. And I have that happen in music rehearsals all the time. Like, there's one particular student that comes to mind where they will ask, can you just go over this one part again? And in my brain, I'm like, you know what that part is because I've gone over it 5 times. So clearly, So what you're hearing is the other people around you don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So same thing.
And I think there's a delicate way to do it. And I've had some students who are masters at it. And then some that you can tell it annoys other students sometimes when you're just like, you already know that. Or what. But I think, again, it comes from a place of wanting the group to know what they're doing. So that would be my recommendation. And I even told Ruby last night, I said, Ruby, if it starts to be a problem, then you can definitely go to one of your directors and say, hey, in this part, I don't think so-and-so knows where they're going. And it makes our formation wonky, or I can't make my entrance, or whatever it may be. And then that's it. It might be on the bottom of the list of things to do.
That's right. But I think that's the key also is just talking to a director or a creative team member. Yeah. Because again, don't tell other actors what to do. 1, it's annoying.
And it's bossy,
2, it's
right?
not
And
your
it's
job.
like, why are you telling me? Exactly.
Why are you telling me?
My new philosophy. Oh, I love that song. I will say that I've always loved that show, but the addition of that song and Beethoven Day into the revised version of that show, I love those songs. I love Beethoven Day. That's such a good song.
It is a good song.
Do you know it? Okay, yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Love.
Oh, man. So funny.
I know.
But,
All right. Well,
I'm drinking.
Staying in my own lane, crosses over into so many different things, too. I think it's not just in performing and in parenting. I constantly have to tell myself when I see other parents, like, I'm like, Charna, not your lane, not your lane.
Yeah.
Don't offer your opinion or your advice because that parent is parenting the way they want to parent. So,
right. But then you're also like, that's still not a good choice, parent.
And you know what? Sometimes I actually like when it kind of pans itself out to where I've been given the opportunity to say something where parents will be like, oh, so-and-so just, this. And I'm like, well, maybe it's because blah, 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 and you can kind of pepper it in there.
Yeah.
But there are certain areas that it's just like, you know what? I got to stay in my
and it's kind of like
lane over here.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of like what we were talking about before. You don't necessarily, especially in parenting, you don't live with that person. You don't know you don't know their life 24/7. And you don't know what struggles they're having beyond that. Like maybe they're just making a choice because they literally have to just make it through the moment. And
yes, honestly, oh my gosh, Christopher, No, finish. Sorry. I have such a great example of that. Finish your thought.
No, it was just that, I mean, that's true in theater too. Like, you don't know all the things that have gone into the director's vision or anything like that. Like, that's just one piece. And just because you think that one piece is weird or you don't like it doesn't mean that it doesn't fit the show, unlike Frozen opening act 2.
Asterisk. We cannot handle Frozen opening act 2. No, I think with theater, you're absolutely right. And I know because we've been on the other end of it where, again, from an audience member's perspective who hasn't been through the process, maybe they haven't seen that student's growth, right? So they see the student perform and they're like, oh, well, they should have done this, or it would have been better. And it's like, friends, you have no idea where that student started. And where they are today performing is huge. And I think sometimes when you haven't sat through the process, or with choreography is a big one. When I see like maybe not very clean choreography or it's not like, I'm like, well, maybe this is like a huge improvement for them. Maybe they've grown so much and I don't know, you know?
Yeah.
But I have a really funny story about that with parenting. I will never forget this. So Sebastian, before he was like baseball, basketball, football guy, we had him in soccer. And it was during the pandemic and they were still doing soccer outside. And I dropped him off and you'd come and sit and watch soccer practice. Like no one had anything else to do because we couldn't go anywhere, you know? And so I remember I had Winston. He was a little baby pup and Sebastian ran off with his buddies and I sat down with Winston in like my soccer mom chair and I was going to like do work on my phone or whatever. And tons of kids. We're at this big park. There's all sorts of different teams, all different ages. And I just hear this mother out of nowhere screaming at her child, get down here, practice. I don't want to hear anything about it. And the kid's like moping and the mom's not like shoving her, but she's like moving her, you know, down to the practice. And she's like, get in there. And she's like, and I am like, oh, what kind of parent? And I'm like, I immediately go so judgy. I'm like, that's horrible. How can you be yelling at your kid like that? And then, I kid you not, 6 months later, I'm at a Halloween party for a very good friend.
6 minutes later.
No. And this mom is there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the mom that I judge. She's super cool. I see her parenting her kids just fine. Mm-hmm. And you know, I have had those moments as a parent. I just normally, it's not in public where everyone's watching me. She was not hurting her kids, but she probably had asked that kid, I don't know, 432 times to put on their soccer cleats and get down to the field. And I get that. And I think it was such a humbling moment for me of like, how dare you, Charna? How dare you judge that poor lady who probably was like, you know, had no sleep and was like spilled food all over her car or whatever it may be. Right. Like, you don't know what people have had happen that day, where they're at. And yes, to a point, you have to put that aside and then move forward and do your job or whatever. But like, I was mad at myself. It's like, Charna,
I know.
You shouldn't be so judgy.
But that's so true in all of life. Like, I always like the thing. I was just talking to seniors, the senior class just the other day about like when somebody says something to you or does something to you that hurts your feelings or is really quite terrible. 99% sure the odds are it has nothing to do with you. It is something else happening in their life at that moment that has boiled over into that situation. So just try to do your best to put that filter on it and be like,
which is, you know, so difficult, and especially
100%.
As teenagers, but even as adults, it's 100%. Very hard to remind yourself of that. But I agree. It's usually not, it's more a them's issue than it is a you issue. You know?
Doesn't make it necessarily easier to deal with, but it's sort of, you can put it in that box, then you're like, not my problem. Has nothing to do with me. And also it's the same reason
I'm gonna stay in my own lane.
That's right. That's right. And it's the same reason I tell people you can only control you and how you react. Mm-hmm. You can't control what somebody else does to you.
Honestly, my husband's like mantra. I don't know how many times he's told that to my kids, how many times he's told that to his team. Like, and it is very hard, but if that can pop into your head when you want to be reactionary, right? Because there's a difference between like responding and reacting. And I think you can respond, but if you just automatically have that terrible reactionary moment, you've got to stop and be like, I can control right now. I can't control what just happened, or I can't control that person or their choices, but I'm able to control what I'm going to say and do. And I think maybe that comes full circle into our stay in your own lane, right? If you have somebody, a parent, a director, a choreographer, somebody, and it doesn't even need to be theater, somebody in your workplace. I could think of it as, you know, with my husband coaching, you have another coach come in and they want to maybe blinker and come in to your lane for a minute. It's all in how you react and respond to it. And if you don't control that, then that situation escalates. If you take a second and say, okay, this person's trying to offer an opinion or offer advice, or maybe it's helpful or maybe it's not, but this is going to be a big moment if I don't react or respond in the right way, you know?
And I think that, yes, correct. I just think that so many times people do just react, and that's so dying.
Please don't die. I need you here.
It's like, I'm like, throat clear. No, still there. But when people do react, it just escalates the situation, and then it just gets worse for everybody. And at some point you do something or say something that is, the damage is much more difficult to undo, whether professionally or personally or anything like that. So be kind, be careful, put that blinker on, ease on in, ease on down the road.
The road. Bum,
That's right.
That's a great, we've talked about stay in your own lane for I don't know how many years, but we've never used the put your blinker on. I really like that.
That's
I'm going
new
to say
today,
that now.
everybody.
At some point, Christopher, I'm going to be like, I'm putting my blinker on. I will be merging into your lane for a moment, and then I will be exiting.
That's right. There's my exit.
I like it.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Oh, so many
All
good
right.
things. Okay. Is it that time?
I feel like so many people deal with the same kind of stuff. So I'm hoping that was maybe somewhat helpful just to hear different situations, circumstances, and especially for younger performers or older performers or people who might be on the receiving end of that sometimes.
Yeah.
To have that little bit of information, a little bit of outlook, insight,
Absolutely.
knowledge, wisdom.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Check us out at uncommonpod.com and follow us on Instagram at Charnopher Official. And at that point, I'm just going to say
Charnopher out.
All right. I know we just said goodbye, but I'm back because I forgot to tell a story, Charna. I forgot.
I know. And it's a good one. It's
a very stay in your own lane story, and the time when it was not time to stay in my own lane. So Charna and I did Chicago a couple years ago, which is one of my most favorite shows to play.
It's one of my favorite shows to do too. It's so fun. So fun.
Super fun. So anyway, so we're doing it, and we're at this theater that we have rented the space, and so it came with a sound person. That will be important.
I'm already laughing.
So we're going through Tech Week. We have a live band. They're awesome. We sound great. Like, it's all going well.
The kids sounded great. We had such good talent in that show.
And we're going through Tech Week, and every day of Tech Week, Shauna's like, the band's too loud. And I'm like, all right, we'll play quieter. Second day of Tech Week. It's sounding okay, but the band's still too loud. I was like, okay, we'll try to play quieter. Now, keep in mind, we have like trumpets and other loud instruments that can only play so quiet. So, like, this is an ongoing thing all week, and I'm starting to get really freaking irritated. And I was like...
And I'm going to interject, because it was one time with you where I was like, he's getting really annoyed with me. And, like, normally, if I'm like, it's too loud. But you literally were like, Charna, we cannot play any quieter. And I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Sorry.
And no, because I don't. It's hard. It takes a lot for me to get irritated with you. Like, a lot. And so that was like that was my
A moment.
That was like my Mercury rising moment with Charna. It's like, so
I just remember you being like, we cannot play any softer. I was like, okay. Sorry, Christopher.
Back it up. Pedal back. So we go through this whole week of this like this discord, almost literally, and we even go through opening night. And I was like, Charna, how was the sound last night? And you're like, gosh, it was a little better, but it was still just not good. And I was like, oh my gosh. I said, okay.
And I had people complain that night, like,
Yeah.
I cannot hear the performers. And I'm like, dang it, what the heck? Like,
I know.
And the kids that were performing are very loud. It wasn't, like they weren't quiet vocalists. Like,
Well, yeah, and they
powerhouses.
kept boosting them, and then they were pushing the mics as hard as they could without getting feedback, which we did. I could tell it was right on the edge. So I'm like, that's not the issue. They're not boosting them. So finally, sound check, day 2. We're playing
Show 2. Like, we've done a performance, friends.
Yes.
We've done a performance.
day 2 of performances. We're at sound check, and I'm like, Charna, how's the sound? You're like, it's still not good. And I was like, I think I threw things. I was like, forget it. I said, everybody play. Band, go. Like, just play. And I marched my angry self out into the house because I know how to march. And I walked into the audience. I stood in the center of the audience. I kid you not, within 12 seconds, I do a slow turn. Charna's standing behind me.
Like slow. It was like from a movie.
Yeah.
It was like turn, 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 turn. I was like, uh-oh, what's happening? What's happening?
Charna, the mains are not on. The house speakers are turned off. Off. There is no sound coming from them. And the sound you are hearing.
And we stood there for a second. We stood there and I was like, oh no, someone's going to get in trouble right now. I just remember being like, how is this moving forward?
All the sound they were hearing was from the stage monitors. That was it. And that's why it was so hard to boost them any higher because, feedback. So I was livid. I was like, I'm sorry, we have a professional sound person here that couldn't figure that out after days of screaming, we can't hear the singers? Are you for real? I am not in my own lane. I did not put on my blinker. Get it fixed immediately.
That's also the exact same time I made a student cry,
Yes.
remember?
Yes.
And then I asked him what his favorite candy bar was. I was like, I'm sorry, I made you
Yes.
cry. What's your favorite candy bar? I'll bring you a
Yeah.
candy bar.
Well,
but I
because,
think,
oh man.
It was a big, you know what? And I think, Christopher, it kind of ties into a lot of what, like, I don't want to do your job. Like, if you, now the
I know.
student, I felt bad about that because it's a kid. It's somebody who's
I know.
learning. But the professional in that booth who we were paying should have caught that, should have known. Why does it take our musical director and our piano player to come out and have, like, yeah, that was a moment that needed a full cutoff into someone else's lane.
That's right.
It was correct. It was correct.
Yeah. So there are times.
And then guess what, everybody? Everything sounded fabulous after that.
Sorry to the people that came to the first show.
And then, like, parents who came to the second show, they're like, oh, you guys fix it. Now we can hear them. And I'm like, well, Christopher W. Smith fixed it.
That's right. You know who shouldn't have had to fix it? Christopher W. Smith.
But you merged.
I merged.
You went in the lane.
Cut over across 3 lanes to get in that lane. Because, come on now.
While marching.
While marching. Oh, I marched. I marched with great verve and vigor.
Man. I think that's probably our I don't want to say worst, but like our most prolific moment in our lane changing history.
Oh yeah, that was my biggest lane change for sure. I cut across the 12-lane freeway. But yeah.
All right, now that you've told your famous lane changing story, we should close out again and say
we can go.
Say bye. We can go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just needed to come back and say that.
Hope that was a nice little PS moment for you guys in this podcast. It's a good story. It was needed.
Okay. All right. We'll catch you next time. For the second time. Here we go.
Charnopher out.
This concludes another episode of Uncommon Sense. If you're ready for more of this fresh, hilarious, and unique perspective on the world of entertainment, education, and life, be sure to subscribe right now to catch every episode. If you gasped, laughed out loud, or even snorted, share the show with your friends and aspiring entertainers because, let's be real, sharing is caring. For more Charnopher, tune in to their witty insights by checking out the website uncommonpod.com or connecting on social media. Tune in next week and get the real insider scoop on another episode of Uncommon Sense.